live? And I think we're live. So welcome everybody to this remote interview. My name is Lisette and I'm interviewing people and companies doing great things remotely. And I'm super excited today because I have Marc Hughes. And Marc, you're the founder of Rogue Software and the co-founder of Scrumdo, which is how I heard about you through David Horowitz of Retrium. So that's exciting. And I looked on your website and it says you love software development, you're constantly exploring new tech, and you're building interesting things. So welcome. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Well, great. Thanks for having me.
And let's start with the first question, which I always start with, is what does your virtual office look like? What do you need to get your work done?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, there's two main people in Scrumdo right now, me and the other co-founder, Ajay. We work pretty differently from each other. He's does a lot of the training and customer interaction and stuff, and I do a lot of the tech side. So we don't even work necessarily at the same time much. We kind of have a workflow that we work through, and we track our work on our own product, Scrumdo, and that's how we kind of communicate is through the work. I'm very much a text-based guy. I'm all IM and Skype chat and that sort of thing, and he's very much a voice guy. So depending on kind of who starts the conversation depends on how we kind of work together for that day.
Oh, interesting. Do you guys have an agreement about that? I mean, did you have to sit down and say, okay, you're a phone guy and I'm not so much a phone guy?
No, it just kind of evolved over time, and I think it's almost it's almost kind of, you know, like I try to start the conversation so that I can do it in text, and he tries to do it so he can do a call. But no, I mean, we're both comfortable doing it the other way. It's just I really like having that kind of written, log of what we talked about, so that 3 months from now, when I don't remember anything about it, I can go back and look through it and that sort of thing.
It's an interesting motivator for proactive communication. I'd never thought of that before.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Brilliant. So sorry, I interrupted as you were describing your virtual office and what you need.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we use Scrumdo for all of our work tracking, and that gives us a pretty good log of the work that each of us are doing. Past month or so, I've been doing a lot of marketing work, and he's been doing a lot of training work at a client site. So it kind of lets us know what's going on in the company. And then also our accounts person keeps track of all of the recurring accounts in a project so that we can see when build accounts are coming up and that sort of thing. We use GitHub for all of our source control, so that's how he kind of keeps in touch with the technical happenings, because he can see all the changes that me or one of the other developers makes. Speaking of other developers, we have some contractors that we work with that are overseas, and they're generally mostly email-based communication with them.
Okay.
Obviously, we're using GitHub again with them to track the work they do, and using Scrumdo to assign work to them and that sort of thing. So,
where in other places are the contractors? What is overseas?
Yeah, right now we're working with a guy in India. We've worked with people in the Philippines, and we've most recently worked with a design firm out in the west coast of the U.S. So,
Okay.
It's varied a bit, yeah.
And how many people do you think in total are working for Scrumdo at any one time? Does it vary a lot based on the project, or?
Yeah, we really kind of scale up and scale down with contractors. Right now, it's me and Ajay. We have an accounts person, Diana, and then we have one contractor we're working with right now out in India. For larger projects, we'll scale up a bit. Like I mentioned, that design firm, there was 5 or 6 people we were working with over there.
Right. I like the idea of businesses being able to scale up and down based on the project work that's needed. I find that to be, a lot of people say with remote working that it's flexibility for the worker, but I also have seen it's flexibility for the companies too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean it's really helped us.
Did Scrumdo start remote right from the start?
Yeah, we started remote, but me and Ajay had worked together in an office at a different company, so we knew each other and we knew how each other worked. So that's that we for a little while we had a kind of a co-working office that was kind of in between our 2 homes. So we would meet there occasionally, but that actually gets sold, so we don't have anywhere to meet right now. And actually,
Okay.
Ajay moved, so we can't even meet anymore.
Okay, so then they just sort of forced you to go completely remote.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
what does your product do? Tell us a little bit about Scrumdo.
Yeah, so Scrum is a methodology. It's an agile methodology, mostly for software developers. It's kind of where it originated. Although a lot of other industries have been getting into it recently. We got a lot of marketing, and we've even got a couple legal companies that are tracking their cases that way. But it kind of prescribes a way of working so that um, it's got a certain way of creating work items and then tracking work items through the process. And then most recently, we've been investing more in this thing called Scrumban, which is a kind of layering Kanban practices on top of Scrum. So things like Scrum really prescribes a fixed iteration to work in. So you have like 2 weeks to do a batch of work and then another 2 weeks to do another batch of work. Whereas Kanban does more of a continuous flow of work coming in, getting processed, moving out. And there's different ways of tracking statistics on work depending on how you're working with it. And so we've been looking at being able to do both sorts of things like that.
Cool. So it's based on whatever methodology works best for your team. You can decide how then you want to use Scrumdo to move your team through the process of getting the work done.
Yeah, exactly. And we try to be real flexible because, I mean, every company out there does Agile a little bit differently than everyone else.
Yeah, to the chagrin of many agile coaches, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm
It is
sure.
as it is, yeah.
Right.
And so, what about the idea? Now, Scrumdo is a completely virtual tool, right? It's meant
Hmm.
for virtual teams using the Scrum methodology. And I hear a lot in the Agile world that Agile can't be remote, that it's really based on, clearly you don't believe this because you have built a product that, that
Yeah. No,
works. So,
I certainly don't believe that at all. I mean, before we started Scrumdo, I was working with remote teams that were doing Scrum, and it's just fine. You just need to find the right amount of communication between the team. You need to find a lot of the benefits of Scrum come from just visualizing the work. So if you have a tool that you can visualize the work that's going on, it's pretty easy. A lot of people who prefer the all co-located within the same place like that big giant board on the wall with the sticky notes and everything. And that's great if you're all there. But as soon as you have one person that's not in the office every day, you need some kind of virtual tool that everyone can be able to see and manipulate.
and why did you guys go overseas for the contracting? Because I mean, is it that you can't find the talent locally, or
So, I mean, we've worked with a couple domestic developers as well. I mean, it's not that we were focused on someone overseas or domestic. It's just, we want to work with the best people, and we found this great developer named Lokesh that's out in India. He's a little bit cheaper too, which is great, but
right,
it's
added
really about,
bonus?
yeah, exactly. But it's really about working with the best people that we can find, and it doesn't matter where they are.
And how do you find people?
Actually, Ajay's found all of our contractors so far. I haven't been on that side, so I don't know.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he'll show up with this guy. He'll be like, "This guy's great," and I'll talk with him, and either I'll agree and we'll go with him, or I'll disagree and we'll either have a text or a voice chat, and from there we'll figure out what to do. Yeah.
Interesting. So let's talk about how you guys work together then, and we've kind of started to talk about some of the benefits of how you're working together, but what really are the benefits of how you guys are working together? I mean, it sounds like you've already got you're working with the best people that you can find, so that's a
Hmm.
huge benefit. Are there others, I should ask?
Um, well, I mean, if you mean just kind of benefits to working remotely, I mean, for me personally, not having a commute is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I live about an hour west of Boston, and depending on the day, it might be 2 or 3 hours to get in. Ajay is really taking the ability to move. He's bought two different houses since we've been doing Scrumdo and moved. So kind of that flexibility has been really great for us.
Okay, and what about, and specific to your team, what are some
Hmm.
of the things that are hard about the way that you're working together,
Um,
or things that you struggle with?
Yeah, so yeah, that's a tough one because I guess maybe keeping on the same page all the time because we're so focused on kind of different areas of the business, making sure that we stay aligned for the common goal and keep moving in the same common direction. It's been a little bit of a challenge for us. Um, we've had a lot of times we'll disagree on small details because I'm looking at the details of, say, the card edit window for 3 days straight while he's working on the working with one specific customer for 2 weeks straight. And it's
Right.
just our focus is split like that, and occasionally disagreements about some minor things will come up.
Sure, that seems like a healthy, normal team also.
Yeah, I would think so. Sure.
Yeah, and also alignment is something that I think every team struggle with, whether
Hmm.
you're co-located or on a remote team. So yeah, I can understand. I definitely hear that. And what are some of the techniques that you guys have put in place? So you say you used your tool to build the
Hmm.
tool, and I find that very cool. And I mean, it seems critical, right? You have a great tool for task management.
Hmm.
And what are some of the things that you guys use to keep communication flowing?
Yeah, one thing that we started doing maybe just 4 or 5 months ago is we created a project just for tracking the super high level things that we want to accomplish in the future. Like I mentioned that I've been working on marketing stuff for the past month or so. So that's one card on there. And it helps us prioritize those big high level things that are coming up. Um, like I can look at that board and know that in after we finish our current batch projects, we're probably going to work on some larger company enterprise type features. And Ajay's in agreement with that. We don't know what those features are yet, but we know
Right.
that that's the area of the company we want to focus on next.
So you know the direction that you're heading in, so that the
Yeah, yeah.
right the details after it sounds like can be sorted out.
Yeah, and actually another project that we just recently created is a kind of a reading list. So a lot of times Ajay's doing research on agile methodologies and the newest, latest, greatest things. So he'll create a list of cards on that board of things that I should read. And I'll create a list of cards about technical things that we should be doing that he should read. And we can kind of track what the other person has knowledge on already because we know what they've already read because they'll move the card across the board and that sort of thing.
Wow, interesting.
Hmm.
That's a great way to do it. That's true because what about all those recommendations you do get from people, and where do you put those? And
Oh yeah, yeah.
what
Because
a
I mean,
great
for a long time it was just emails, and he would send me an email and be like, "Here, go read this article. It's great." And I would either read it or I'd forget about it and wouldn't read it. So
right.
it's been really helpful. Yeah.
And what kinds of tools do you guys use to communicate? You said there was instant messaging and the
Hmm.
phone. Is there anything else? Is there Skype or a different?
Yeah, we don't really use the phone. It's all Skype. So if I say call, that's really what I mean.
Okay.
Um, we're we do instant messaging, and it's funny. It's either in the Skype client or it's in Google Doc or Hangouts, whatever they call it now. And it kind of swaps back and forth. So I'm always trying to find where that conversation is. We've tried some team communication things like Slack and River, but it just never stuck. I think if we had a larger team, we probably would have to have something like that. We both do customer support, and we have this great tool called Intercom, and that lets us when a customer makes a request, it's kind of like a team inbox, and it comes up, and we can tell if the other person is already starting to answer that question,
Oh,
and
wow.
pair that process in. We can write notes to each other. We can like send little notifications to each other, and that works with both email for the customer, or it works like on the web page in the app. So a little box will pop up, and it's kind of like a two-way chat thing. So that's
Wow.
been really cool.
Great. So it sounds like you have a lot of visibility onto each other's work and what you're
Hmm.
actually doing at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that's key because sometimes we'll actually go like a week without talking with each other, and that's a little extreme, but we'll often go 3 or 4 days. So knowing what everyone's working on is certainly important.
Right. And then you're in touch based on the task or the IM or but the calling on the phone isn't necessary.
Hmm.
Interesting. And how often do you actually see each other in person, if at all, anymore?
Well, before he just moved up to Portland, Maine. So before that, we saw each other probably every 2 months for like a half day or a day long strategy session. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work now since we're further apart and it would be a couple-hour drive for either of us.
Interesting. And do you use video at all?
We don't. And uh, I'm not sure why, but we just don't.
Yeah, I think for people that have been working together for a long time, there's really no need
Hmm.
necessarily to use video. So I can imagine. I'm just always curious how many people use it and how many people don't.
Right.
Interesting. So what about productivity? And so you're using Scrumdo. So clearly there is a velocity of tasks that are going through. But in terms of your own productivity and working from home, are there things that you struggle with or techniques that you use in order to keep yourself focused? Or
Yeah, and there's probably a few facets to that. The first thing is that knowing when I work best is really important. Like I know that early in the morning is my best, most productive time. So I try to schedule the work that's most important to be done to happen in that morning time. From when I wake up till maybe 11 in the morning or so. And then after that is when I'll do more either communication with other members of the team or that sort of thing. Um, the other thing is um, I probably work too much. So I'll work up until dinner, and then oftentimes I'll work after dinner, and trying to find a better balance probably would help a lot because I think a lot of the productivity goes down when you're just working hours that go too long like that. Um,
it's tough when you love your work.
yeah, exactly. And then I had a third one, but I'm forgetting what it
Sorry.
was now.
Darn,
No,
I
no,
shouldn't
no,
have
it's
been
okay.
chronic interrupter, and then I ruined the train of thought if you think about it. So knowing when you work best and the working too much,
Hmm.
it's funny, I hear that a lot with remote workers, and I think it's interesting that managers always say, how will I know what people are doing and if they're working and if they're actually doing their job? And what I hear from the remote workers is that, like, I can't turn off, like I'm always working, I'm always doing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I wonder if that's, I imagine a larger proportion of remote workers are also small business owners. Because I know that's for small business owners, that's definitely an affliction that they have is they just work too much.
right,
I
and
wonder.
freelancers as well,
Oh yeah, certainly, yeah.
because you're just constantly on the hustle as a
Hmm.
freelancer. So yeah, indeed, I hear that a lot. They're always on. And have there been personalities in the history that work or don't work, or people that, I don't know if you've ever hired people that are working remotely for the first time. I know with software developers, it's less likely that they haven't worked remotely because
Hmm.
the whole open source movement and everything. But do you come across people who it just doesn't work for them?
Yeah, we've been through a few contractors that just didn't work. And the thing I think that we need to look for in future contractors is the ability to take a project, understand what we're trying to do, kind of end to end, and be able to own it from end to end. A lot of, or I'm not going to say a lot, but some software engineers really just look at that one smaller tech piece of what they need to do to make it work instead of looking at the bigger overall picture of everything that needs to be done to make a customer find value in the work that's going to be done.
Ah, interesting. So bringing on contractors who can take that bigger picture view a little bit, or yeah, have interest enough to do that.
Yeah, really
Interesting. And
worrying about the end result.
it's probably very hard to find when you're interviewing people.
Oh, it really is. Yeah. I mean, we went through one guy who we thought was going to be amazing, and his technical work was just amazing, but it just didn't work out because we couldn't get him to really think about that end customer goal.
Right. And any troubles with people working remotely, or first timers, or anybody you've brought on board for that?
No, I don't think. I mean, we're a tech company. We work with tech people, so the technology's never been a problem.
Right.
Um, the we've been mostly pretty happy with everything. Yeah.
That's a lucky thing about the tech world is all
Hmm.
the tech guys have all they're not afraid to use the tools, and they've been doing something in the open source world probably from at some point in their careers. Interesting. So let's see. I don't want to skip too much because I want to dive in. So we've talked about communication and productivity and personality. Any other tools? We've got the GitHub and Skype and Scrumdo.
Yeah.
Anything that?
IM, email, intercom, besides the ones you mentioned, we've talked about all those. So, yeah, I can't really think of any tools that we've used beyond that. Um,
Would you ever go back to working in an office again?
well, I mean, never say never, but I don't see any reason why I would at this point. If someone came and offered me $1 million a year, sure, I might consider that.
Right.
But no, I don't see myself doing that. There's just too much freedom that you get from working at home. I have a 3-year-old, and being able to go downstairs and spend time with him whenever I want throughout the day is just, that's just great.
hmm Is it a struggle to balance that when you're working from home, balancing the work and the life?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I mentioned, I probably work too much, but I certainly get away from the desk and away from the office a few times every day, during the day, and I get to see my wife or my kid and do other things. I'm lucky enough that my office is kind of in a separate area of the house. It's up a flight of stairs, and it's kind of off to the side of the house, so I don't get interruptions throughout the day when I don't want the interruptions. So that's been really great.
All right, I can imagine having that really separate space that's kind of harder to get to does make it a little bit like, no, dad's at work.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You're not like sitting at the kitchen table. That would
Hmm.
be probably a bit harder.
Right. Yeah, it's funny too because my 3-year-old has a very skewed sense of what work is now because, I work here. My wife's a professional photographer that works out of her home. So when we talk about going to work to him, he thinks it means, sitting down at a computer or picking up your camera. And he'll talk about his grandpa going to work when he was just, sitting at the kitchen table using the computer or something. And it's kind of funny.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, dad's at work. He's up the stairs.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. I love it. Oh, it's a good skew to have, in my opinion, of course, but I'm
Hmm.
totally grossly on one side, of course. So,
Sure. Yeah.
so what about advice that you would give for people who are starting out? Maybe agile teams that are starting. Do you guys give advice to teams that are starting out when using your tool, or?
Yeah, we've done some coaching and some training with some teams. We're actually trying to expand that part of the business. So, but for a remote team, I think the biggest piece of advice I'd give is keep the team small and hire better people. Don't try to build a huge team that has, less than stellar people, because it's really important that everyone can get in, pull their own weight, get things done.
Interesting. I worked on a team. We built an online product management tool about 10 years ago, and there was maybe 8 developers on the team, and but they were amazing,
Hmm.
amazing guys, and it was crazy what they could build in a
Hmm.
month. I mean, unbelievable. And so sometimes I would look at the bigger tools with all those hundreds of programmers. I thought, what are they doing?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I can see where you're coming from on that.
Yeah. Well, you figure for each person that you add to the team, there's a little bit of overhead because of the communication between people. So as you add more and more and more people, you just get less and less and less productivity out of everyone.
Right. So keeping it small and agile, really.
Hmm.
So we're
Of
talking
course.
around with each other. Okay. Any other advice you'd give?
Well, they should definitely use Scrumdo.
Clearly.
um, yeah, I mean, hiring the best people. If you do that, everything else falls in place. It really does.
Right. So this has been lovely. Is there anything else that I've missed that you want to talk about in your remote working experience that I've
Um,
just sort of missed?
yeah, nothing comes to mind. I'm sure I'll think of like 10 things after we finish this call, um, but yeah.
So if people want to learn more then about Scrumdo, it's
Hmm.
scrumdo.com, I
Hmm.
assume.
Yes, it
And
is.
what about getting in touch with you? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Email's the best way. Mark.hughes@scrumdo.com. You'll find it on the website if you look there. Um, I always have my email on, so I'm always responding to those.
Okay, yeah, some people prefer Twitter or
Yep.
LinkedIn or see, so I always like
Yeah,
to
no, I
ask.
mean Twitter's fine too. I'm M Hughes on Twitter, so.
Okay, well, great. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate talking with you today.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you.
Until next time, everybody, be powerful.